I think for me, it's I think for me, it's movement. I was living home in 2018. I grew up in Benin, and boys from Benin always live home. It's one of the before Yahoo became a vice. It was one of the ways of I think people was using to like get ahead in life. Like you grow once you're 20, sometimes 19, 18, you just leave and you follow Niche. So people were always living home. And I think, but when I was living in Nigeria, because I left Nigeria in 2018 for Ghana, and then I traveled to Senegal, and then I stayed outside for like a year in Accra, and came back and moved to the US. So I think that was the way I was thinking about exile already, about leaving already, because I've never left home before. And I was thinking about exile, and I was thinking about history and about movement, and I was curious enough to try to write poems that could bridge those three things together. So a lot of the poem talks about history, whether it's pre-colonial history, whether it's colonial history, what is even modern day history, and how those three things form our outlook in life. And I was just trying to experiment with those things. I think there's something very fascinating about Nigeria, especially about young Nigerians, right? In the sense that a lot of us really have no idea what history is to us. So there's mostly that very. So, for example, if you go on Twitter and people are talking about history, it's most like, the British gave Nigeria to the Hausas, or the Yoruba betrayed the Igbos, or the Igbo did this, or this one did that, right? So we really don't know our own history. The history we know are things that have been put out there to divide us, without even really saying, let's go beyond what is out there, right? Because of course there are like things that are dividing us. I would always acknowledge that, but there are also historical facts that are things that have been done to us, that why we are the way we are right now, And I was curious enough to like look at what those things are, and so a lot of the poems, especially the earlier poems, it's about movement, but also about looking back at those things. So whether it's writing about colonial hangings in like the old Calabar region, for example, or even talking about, say, the slave trade, people mourning people who've gone, and all of that. I think I'm just a curious person who really wants to understand who I am in the world. And I think part of understanding who I am is also understanding the history of how we became a people, and what that history means to us. I don't think so. First of all, I'm not a historian. I think I'm just someone who really wants to like stretch the boundaries of what poetry can do, or what Nigerian poetry is. So you think about what Tade Badiola, for example, did in Sahara Testament, which is going around the Sahara and writing the history of the Sahara into poetry. And I'm someone who thinks about that and say, okay, what if I go this other direction? What if I stretch it to this other direction? What comes out of it? I think there's one thing of knowing the knowledge. There's another thing of applying that knowledge to your own being as a person. I think there are lots of because I've been in the archives, for example. There are a lot of things I've read, and a lot of things I've also known about, especially the colonial history of Nigeria and a lot of things. But however, I think knowing who I am has a larger part to do with certain things about my own self. I mean, history plays a part, the present plays a part, the anticipation for the future also plays a part. But I don't think I really at that point where I can say I know fully who I am. I think sometimes as poets, right, we write for ourselves and sometimes we write beyond ourselves. I have, for example, gotten a lot of mails from especially like Nigerians in the diaspora who, whether they were born here or came here as children who've read Nomad and say, hey, thank you, like I've known more about Nigeria or the history or what it means to be in exile from reading this book than even reading books in school. And I think sometimes as poets, maybe, or as writers, that's what our duty is to witness certain things and present it to the public and say, hey, I've witnessed this, and allow them to get into the work and find their own space in the work, right? And I think in that way, it's not a whole, there's no writer that writes, there's no writer that encompasses the whole of what Nigeria is. Right from, say, Achebe, even Osadebe, for example, the poems of Dennis Osadebe, till, say, Remi Raji, Elechi Amadi, Harry Garuba, and to the present generation, myself, Benga Deshino, Swedi, Sadiq, and a lot of other people. I think there's a way in which every poet contains a little part of the truth of what society is or who we are as a people. And so I think I'm just contributing. I think that's like that little contribution, and then the reader does the rest. But everyone is just contributing a little part of what we do, at least in my own opinion. I think, yeah, I think this is what I'm different from most people. I grew up very poor. Like I was an orphan. I've been very homeless in Nigeria before. And so I think for me, it's quite different. I'm not, when it comes, I don't believe in those ideologies where it's like, oh, there's a positive or negative. I honestly don't care. I think that when people are hungry, when there's poverty in the land, people would always gravitate towards where there's comfort. People would gravitate towards where they can, like a lot of people like sacrificing, they don't want to leave, but they're sacrificing so their children can be able to have a little bit of comfort. And I think it's just only fair. I mean, there's a negative part of like who's going to be the doctors, what's going to happen to the country, and it's quite sad. But the truth of the matter is just that people have believed in the country for a long time. I remember when even as someone who had nobody to take care of me, I got a scholarship offer, I think 2007, 2008, to go to a school in the US, Clark College, and I didn't take it. I was like, oh, Nigeria is going to be, I was young and naive and idealistic. And I was like, oh, Nigeria is going to be good. We have to, if everyone leave, blah, 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 and all the stuff. But I think with time, there's like a tiredness, like the young people are just tired. I think we also live in a time where we're seeing what our mates elsewhere outside of Nigeria are doing. The internet has collapsed the world into this very borderless place where people just move through. And we're seeing young people who might not even be as dedicated or as talented as us because of the resources they have, doing way more with their lives and being way comfortable in their career field than what a lot of young Nigerians are passing through. And so a lot of people are just like, hey, you know what? I have tried all my life. I've been here. I need to go. And I don't know whether it's, I think time will tell if it's a bad thing or a good thing. I actually think there's something positive to it that I've been seeing, which is a lot of us, for example, who are writers are coming back to hold workshops in Nigeria, whether it's online or in person for other young people. On my own part, for example, I grew up in Benin. I'm surprised to see a lot of young guys in Benin, for example, Benin is notorious for cultism and all that stuff. And then I'm seeing a lot of young people who write to me and say, hey, I want to write poetry. Can you help me? And I think living abroad affords me that space to also create certain space for other people. I also see young women who are my friends on Facebook who are creating wonderful programs for other young women who are coming into tech. A lot of them, funny enough, a lot of them are not even moving to Nigeria again. A lot of them are now working remotely and being in Nigeria and doing well for themselves. And these are young women, for example, who would never have known that if some of their friends didn't move. So I think for me, I'm seeing the positive side. I know there's a negative side, but honestly, I'm not that idealistic person who would come out and say people should not do this or people should not do this. I mean, when you're hungry, when you've lived a life where you're sick and you have no idea where to get money to go to the hospital, when you're 1 minute away from every calamity that's coming, you have to do what you have to do, and we're human beings. And I mean, who's to force people who try to survive? I think history. I'm Yoruba. I don't speak Yoruba at all because no one taught me. My mom is Benin. I really didn't grow up knowing what it means to be Benin. And so I think for me, what have always inspired me has always been that question of belonging, of the different parts of the world that I find myself. I'm trying to look at what's beyond the ordinary and say, what's this? What's in front of me? And I think I've always been curious that way, right from primary school. And I've always been asking that question of like, oh, what is this and what is that? And I think that's the same mindset that I have brought into writing, and trying to understand it's like, I mean, I think there are poets who are like, I'm a political poet. There are poets who are like, I'm a social critic and all of the above. I don't see myself like that. I can write a political poem today, and write something else tomorrow. But there's only one question I think that threads through my poetry, which is what's happening. I'm just like curious. I want to know what's really happening around me. Saying someone look up to people, it's really a stretch. I think looking up to writers are like fallible people. I don't think people look up to anybody. I think you're inspired by people. Chris Abani, poetry. It's one I really love for its tenderness. I love Harry Garuba's poems a lot. And I love his poems just because there's like this witty, rich Africanness he brings to it. But there's also this very contemporary language also that drives the poem. So it's like this perfect blend of, who he is as a citizen of a particular place in Nigeria and who he is as a citizen in the world. And it fascinates me a lot. J.P. Clark is someone who I love, his earlier poems. Elechi Amadi also. I think outside of the Nigerian space, Kofi Awono, Dennis Brutus, Dambuzo Marachera. But most times I'm fascinated about Eastern European poets because they're also like very restless people who write about every single thing in the world. So Adam Zagajewski, Milosz, Wisława Szymborska, Roca, the Austrian-German poet, just a lot of people, really a lot of people. I can stand here and just tell you, just be calling in for the next 10 minutes. I just read very wild. And I'm someone who I really, I can just wake up one morning and say, okay, for the next 1 month, I'm going to be reading Brazilian poets alone, or Argentinian poet translated in English, or Ugandan poets. And I think every single poet I read has left something in me, have influenced me in terms of language, in terms of style, in terms of the outlook to the world and all of that stuff. So yeah. I'm just great people write. I mean, I get to read poems. That's the most beautiful. I'm more of a reader than a writer. I really love reading than writing. So, yeah. I mean, I'm more of a very, for lack of a better word, I'm still interrogating what it means. I don't think I'm fully a Marxist, but I'm more of a Marxist or a socialist. And so, because I see Nigeria, for example, and we've tried everything. We've tried every single damn thing since independence. And no system has worked for us. It's still the rich, it's the rich. And I'm like, okay, why not just try something different? In some it's not really, I don't really see leaders as people I aspire to. I don't want to be one. I'm more of people who exist in the shadow and write about society and try to understand what's happening. So Fanon, for example, is someone who I read very well, the Ratchet of the Earth, America Cabral, MLK, Du Bois. I also so I'm more of a very theorist person. I read a lot of theories, people who theorize about the world and what's happening in the world. Because I think somehow the leaders we've had, we've always done things the same way. And I think one of the problems we're having is that we're having leaders who have no idea of who they are in the world, who really, have no ideological backgrounds, who really have not read what it means to even rule. And so I think I'm fascinated about reading about those things and using it to look at society and say, hey, what's happening here? Which is, that's the only thing I always think. There's been any leader in Africa that I've aspired, Maybe if they could give a writer the leadership position and allow Wole Soyinka to be president, maybe I'm like, yeah. But the problem also, it's like allowing writers are idealistic people. We live a lot of times in the cloud and in our heads trying to understand things. So I don't know how that works with ruling a country, but
I wish you all things that you prosper.
It's the question we've been asking ourselves for a long time. I have my own opinion. It's a very controversial opinion. I'm really up for people who say the country should divide. I really support it. I've been to the length and breadth of Nigeria. I've lived everywhere. I have seen people talk, from the educated folks to folks on the streets, And yeah, there's something we love about the country: Afrobeats, our writers, and our outlook in the world. That's like, oh, I'm a Nigerian, and which is great. And I love that. And then on the other hand, there's also this deep-rooted divide. Like we're just so broken. Like not just society itself, but our own spirits. There's something so broken about us. There's something so, it's like really ugly, that to even start unpacking it, it's something very serious. You look at the headsman crisis, for example. I don't understand why it's difficult to solve. You have people killing people in their farms. You have people kidnapping folks. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. A crime has been committed. The country should face the crime squarely. Yes, we might address what it means to have ranch and grazing sites and all that stuff. That's by the wayside, but people have been killed and people have suffered. And where's the justice for those people? Right? It's a simple case. A crime has been committed, it should be solved. But it's not, because there are a lot of things at play that makes it so difficult for people who have been killed, for their families to even have justice for them. You look at the North, a lot of kids who are going to school have been kidnapped. It should be very easy to solve, right? Someone comes into your house and takes something, you go back and get it from them. You're the state, you have all the powers. But there's so much at play, there's so much politics, so much ethnicity at play, that what happens, the lives of these young people becomes something that becomes like a political football match between people, even on Twitter, like, oh, yeah, they're Hausas, they don't understand anything. But yeah, we've forgotten that like the same blood that flows through us also flows through those people. They are human beings like us. There's a crime that has been committed. There are families that are grieving But we're not saying that because we're bringing in that Yoruba and this. The same thing with the Igbos, the same thing with the South. I mean, I grew up in the South. I understand what it means when people, like even during the whole crisis period, you have real people who are suffering real things and their pain becomes overshadowed by this ethnicity and everything. And I'm just like, see, if we've done this since time immemorial, let's go our separate ways and see what will happen. I mean, I'm not saying it's the solution to things, but I'm just saying, like, let's see what will happen then. Like, let's just see what will happen then. Because like I said, I'm not really someone who believes in ideologies who like, oh, I'm going to tell you one Nigeria and this and this. And I don't, like, I'm just like, I'm a human being who read about things, who see people suffering, who have gone through that suffering also. And I'm just like, at this point in time, what does it mean to even be Nigerian? I think that's a question a lot of us really are not asking ourselves. The Naira is about 800 Naira to a dollar right now. People cannot even afford to live. Schools have been on strike for how many months now? The hospitals have been the hospitals have been dead for a long time. Like my mom died in a hospital because the doctors went to church, and so you have like a country in which on every system it's failing. And part of the failure is an inability to say this is wrong, because once you say this is wrong, it becomes an issue of ethnicity. I mean, Buhari, as far as I know, has been an inefficient buffoon since the past 8 years or 7 years, right? Maybe now there's a Nigerian universal claim to like he's useless. But he has been useless for a long time and he got re-elected. Why? I'm not even saying about his first term. I know Goodluck had to go. There was no choice. There are like a lot of excuses we all make. But what happened in the second term, right? You go on Twitter and you also like talk about Buhari right now. You have a lot of people from the North who would practically want to just tear you apart. Well, look at the coming election. I don't understand why someone like Tinubu is even contesting. He has been in power for how many years? Donkey years. He should be an elder statesman relaxing. But no, it's the greed. And it's been fueled by ethnicity. You have a lot of Yoruba people saying, yeah, it's our turn. And I'm like, what the hell is Tom doing in this? There's nothing like Tom. We're suffering. It should be like a competent person. And I'm not even supporting any of the candidates. I'm like, every of them have their own flaws, and you can't even talk and say, okay, like, look at Peter Obi and like the Utah clamoring after him. And I get it. And I know there's like a fresh voice, a fresh face. And I'm like, yeah, can we also talk about what, like, you don't tell me we can fix this. Can we also ask how you're going to fix it without it being descending into people being attacked based on ethnicity or something else? I get it. Like, you want to fix things. If you ask me, I want to fix Nigeria also. The question becomes how. Tell us how. What? Like, I think people are so quick to forget, and it's still part of this ethnicity thing. Once someone rises up and is part of us, we totally forget everything about history and we run to that person. Every politician has always told us that they're going to fix things. Goodluck said clean air. I remember then when I was traveling to Abuja, there was this billboard, fresh air by 2022, 2020. It's every politician has come and said we'll do this. They've not. And it's because of this ethnicity. So I'm like, there's an inability to really reckon with the corruption and inefficiency of government and politicians because of tribalism and because of religion in Nigeria. I'm like, so let's just go our separate ways. As if I'm part of, for example, Yoruba Republic, and the Yoruba president is being corrupt, let me face you fair and square. Knowing I don't have to deal with the other things. But that's my own opinion. I mean, I know people also have their own opinion about how to fix the country, how to go. People think dividing is not a thing, we should never divide. And I get that. But I'm just saying, for me, as a very tired Nigerian, let's just go our separate ways.
But when you look around at all the successful people in history,
people should write, like, look for what, people should look for what's the most urgent question of their life and just write. Like if you want to be a writer, the most important thing is you have to read more than you write. You have to read far and wide. Like you don't have to like hide in provincial knowledge. You don't only have to read Nigerian poets. You don't only have to read me. Like you have to read everybody, those who have been here, those who are away from here, people in India, people in Pakistan, people everywhere. Like just read as wide as you can, especially like when you're young. Because when you get older, the facts of life becomes challenging. You have to eat, you have to work, you have to like put your house in order. And then if you get married, it's a whole different ball game. So I'd say to young people, like while you're young, experiment as much as you can, read as much as you can. And then just write, like trust yourself and your voice.
Story, they are all great readers. You see they read.
I was talking to someone earlier this morning, another interview, and I'm like, it's really a great prize. You know, it's when you think about place of prizes in the world and how prizes elevates people literature, the literature of other country, and you see what NLNG is doing, then there's something to be appreciative of what they're doing. You know, there's a fact that it elevates the literature of the country. I think there's also a way in which it relaxes the minds of parents. It's like, oh, $100,000. Okay, you can go write. You know, whereas in the past, to be a poet means to be poor. So I think there's a way it addresses a lot of things. I only just wish the prize has been held every year and the money is like split, like way lower, like maybe 20,000 split between the genres. So every year it's a rotational thing. But I mean, that's my own wish. I'm not the person with the money. The man with the knife dictates how he wants his yam to be cut. So
It was hard. Children of nowadays, you like things to.
I really don't allow myself to think about things that much. I only know that the people on the shortlist are very powerful poets. Sadiq he was the one I was talking to before I joined the Zoom. And Swedi also. So I know that they're powerful poets, and any of us who wins the prize elevates the prize, really elevates the prize, because I think it's the first time young people are given a chance to stake their own voices in what Nigerian poetry is on that level. So yeah, I think for me, the only thing I know is if I win it, I'm going to be happy. And if I don't, I'm going to be sad because I'm a human being. But I'm definitely going also to be very happy for anyone who wins it.
Go easy for you, and I don't know when you read. You go about all day pressing your phones, and I don't know how you pass your examination. Yeah. I'ma show you where look I am. 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 I'ma show you where.
I read and do all my reading on my phone. Down from the time when man was breaking stones and hunting games, things have continued to be easier. Easy does it that. All those books are now in e-copies, soft copies, easy to read and download. Is it not just to be rich? I know tomorrow will be easier than today.
You mean